Welcome to Marketing State of Mind, the podcast where clarity meets visibility. I'm Lynn Colbot, strategist and systems whisperer, here to unpack the mindset behind your marketing moves. Whether you're launching, scaling, or starting over, let's find the choices that actually feel like you. Welcome back to A Marketing State of Mind. Today, I'm joined by Steve Walsh, entrepreneur, venture capital investor, and author of Make the 10X Leap. With over 25 years of experience helping founders scale and prepare for exits, Steve has seen what it takes to go beyond incremental growth. What makes his perspective so compelling is that it's not just about risk and reward. It's also about clarity, wellness, and the mindset shifts that help leaders thrive. Steve, I'm so excited to dive into your journey and all the lessons you've learned along the way. Welcome.
Thanks a lot, Lynn. It's great to meet you. When you say the lessons you learn along the way, I mean, it's you learn a lot about yourself. You learn about a lot about what it takes to make a company grow, and actually, what's the mindset that really comes along with that? That you want to scale the company. There's so many things that you put the roadblocks in front of you, and if you continually see that, you can't get out of your own way. And so then it's a matter of like, how do you do that? How do you get yourself out of your own way? And that's, like the book says, to make the 10X leap. A lot of entrepreneurs, they're kind of stuck in that cycle, and they want to get to the next level, but they just don't know how. And that's where that's what it talks about.
Yeah. Sorry, I had so many things because you were going, and I was like, "Oh yes, and that," because what you're leaning into is that, and I'm just going to paraphrase it, that scaling block where I don't work with clients in the same way you do, but I see them as entrepreneurs or small businesses who are like, "Well, now I'm at this level, and what's next? It's called growth."
Yeah.
And their mindset is, but I'm here. There is nothing outside of here except for working harder, and it's not that. So could you maybe even just talk a little bit? I know you talk a lot about it a lot in your book, but just that mindset of them being stuck and how you talk them through their next level of evolution.
Yeah, a lot of times entrepreneurs, they always do the same thing. It's, my business is different. I can't do it. I don't have the team. I don't have the money, all the things that they tell themselves. And I always start with, all those things are not true. That trying to go through it is, how do we get to the point where they do see a bigger picture? And that's really where it starts, is they got to see the bigger picture, because a lot of times they're stuck at certain level because they don't see the bigger picture, what their company could possibly be. I always say that a company should be able to get to 100 million. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And people always laugh at me when I say that, but quite frankly, it's, you can scale a company. It's a matter of either you do acquisitions or you do partnerships, a lot of things that you bring along the way. But it starts in the mindset of they can actually see the bigger picture. I always, I'm a big believer on seeing your future, where that is. And that's really where it comes down to, is if they don't believe it, it's not going to happen. And so it's just getting them to the point where it's like, yeah, this is possible. And quit telling themselves that they can't do it, their company's different, all the things. And and the other thing is too, is, your podcast, really, I believe in the marketing. And a lot of times entrepreneurs, they're really good at either producing a product or service, but their marketing is what they struggle with. And that's where I get back to let's get this mindset working, and then let's see where the marketing is really weak in those areas. Do they understand their customer base? Do they understand uh, what it takes to get more customers and keep their customers? And then just work through a lot of things like that, creating what their perfect customer is. If maybe they have 4 or 5 different perfect customers, can we get revenue streams that they haven't thought of? Those are the things that we look at. Is a lot of times they have maybe 1 or 2 revenue streams. I like 4 or 5. And how do we get those up and running and and then get the right people on? This is the other thing, is that people always say, well, I don't have the people. I can't afford the people. I always say you can't afford not to have the people. Really, once you get maybe that one piece, that one person, maybe that's that one person that you really needed. And you're going to spend maybe a little bit of money for that person, but quite frankly, it's going to get you to the next level. And that's where you come in. It's like a snowball effect. The more things you do like that, it really gets you moving that direction. And stay out of the sewer cycle. You know, stay out of that. And you might not have the right team. That's the other thing is too. There's a lot of times where the team that you brought isn't the team that's going to get you there. That you may have a couple people in on that team that are slowing you down, and that's a possibility too. So there's a lot of things that when you look at the mindset, you got to get that working first, seeing a bigger picture, and then from there it's a matter of, okay, what are the other things? If they're putting in 80 hours a week, we got to do something different. We got to change that, because 80 hours a week is not going to cut it. You got to be, outside is outside of the work is just as important as being in the business. And so what are you doing for things like that? I'm a big believer in things like meditation, working out, um, going for just a basic walk, getting yourself out, taking a vacation, things like that are really important to get your mindset to the next, thinking differently. And I've seen entrepreneurs that have done that, and they've seen that bigger picture, what they could potentially do, and then it's a matter of, okay, what can we do? You
So,
know,
just when you're talking about a little bit about mindset, which we love to talk about because we find, and you elaborated on it a little bit, was people put up their own roadblocks and they also create their own opportunities, and it's really this this non-existent thing in their mind that sets them up for success or failure. And I love that it's something we can actually control what we're doing. And that's a lot of why I bring people together like this, is to talk about it. So you're so grounded in the way you're talking, and you're talking about like this rhythm with work and life. So I guess my question is that, have you always had that approach to marketing and work? Is this something that you started out with, or is this something that you developed and nurtured over time as you kind of built your career and worked in your industry?
yeah, I think I've always had the idea that marketing was really important, but the idea, the other things along with it, I think, was as I progressed in life. I learned things, got rid of things, put things in my tool. I call it my toolbox. And those are the things that I really need to bring along with it. And I'm a big learner. And that's the one thing I think is, I think when I look at entrepreneurs that do really well, is that is one of the things that they're really good at. They're really a big learner. They leave their ego at the door. They are a sponge. And those are the ones that I think, if I look at, is how I progress in life. I'm continually learning about not business, just business, but myself. What do I enjoy? What do I like? Um, what I'm good at? What are the people that I need to replace myself, with those people? Because a lot of times as an entrepreneur, we think we can do everything. Well, that doesn't,
Yeah.
we're, we're weak in a lot of areas that, yeah, that doesn't happen all the time. And so I, I, I think it's just the journey. My journey is going to be different than somebody else's journey. I'm always a big believer in, okay, pushing myself, continually doing things getting outside my comfort zone.
Okay. Well, you mentioned toolbox, and I love that. And we had talked a little bit before we went live about other things like future me and present me and things like that. And your company's name is Bison Equity Group, and when I went on the website and just kinda checking things out, I got on a page that explained why you chose that, which I didn't know, so maybe you wanna explain a
Yeah.
little bit about, your company and the name you chose and why.
So Bison Equity Group I saw a lot of things going on in private equity that I felt that, there's a lot of companies, they struggle to get to the next level. And that's really why I wrote the book. And so I felt that I could bring a lot of value to businesses. Bison, why bison is this is a bison does one thing really well. In a storm, they push forward through the storm versus running back away from the storm. And so a lot of times I talk to entrepreneurs and it's a matter of getting through the storm, pushing through that storm because there is a better version of you on the other side of that storm. And so it's a matter of like that is why I brought Bison Equity Group in that is for as a company that's why because there is that better version of you. There is that better version of the company that you own that you just push through that storm. And that's where you find people that mentors, you advisors, things like that can help you along the way. If you think you can do it by yourself, it's not the way to do it. Find people that are better than you, um, replace yourself in areas that you're really bad at, things like that. I'd say that the more of those types of things, and then continually learn, that learning mindset is really important because I tell you what, there's a lot of people out there that have done that great things that you can copy. I always say the one thing is, why create it when you can steal it?
Mhm.
That's what it comes down to.
And you'd be
So,
surprised how many, successful people like yourself say that in different ways. Like, and it meaning like it's part of their mantra, and they just all approach it differently. And I say, let's not reinvent the wheel. That's how I say
right.
it, right? And it's like somebody out there has done it already. So let me research and learn and then adapt how they've done it to a way that I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because everybody's going to be different. The way I think is going to be different the way you think. And the way you picture your company is going to be different than the way I picture the company. And so when I look at companies and I bring in investors or I bring in capital, things like that, I have to align with the owner or the founder because a lot of times if I see a different picture than they see, um, we're going to be butting heads. And so it's a matter of like, what is their big picture? I always say that typically what I see is their picture is going to be smaller than my picture. Typically, what I see is if they say it's 20 million, I say it's 50 to 100. So it's just a matter of, and then you work backwards from there. The thing is, what do we need for systems? What do we need for people? How much capital do we need? What kind of capital do we need? and then bring in smart investors. I always say that, a lot of times when you bring in money, capital in, um, sometimes investors, or I should say, sometimes entrepreneurs look at it as a problem. A lot of times I look at it as a partnership. When you look at it as, can this partner that I brought in, can they get me to the next level? And that's a lot of times where it starts. The idea of that connection you have with that investor, or with somebody like me. I come in and, okay, I can bring in a lot of things. What do we need? Sit down and look and see, what does it actually need? I always say that the last thing they typically need is capital, because a lot of times what happens is, if they don't have a lot of things in place, their marketing in place, if they don't really understand their customer base, things like that, they waste a lot of capital on things that they don't need to.
Mm.
So that's where we look at is recurring revenue streams. A lot of times, I'll look at a company and they don't have a recurring revenue stream. And the one thing they always say is, well, our company's different. We can't do that. And it always looks like they, for some reason, are different than everybody else, but quite frankly, they're not. They can bring in a revenue stream that is just, a one that continually, January 1, they know what they're going to be making just on that revenue stream. Really important. And then from there, it's a matter of, like, what other things do they need? And then let's bring in that capital, and see where that capital needs to be deployed. And that's, once they have a blueprint like that, that capital gets deployed so much better, more efficient, places where they typically maybe didn't think about. And the other thing is too, entrepreneurs are one notorious for one thing too: shiny objects.
Yes.
They see that they're making money, their buddy's making money in this area or something like that, and so they are like, oh, that's, maybe I could do that. And so they are always chasing shiny objects. That's where I come in, because it really gets them to the point where, okay, um, let's get focused, refocus ourselves, and really, what is the core that we really need to understand about the company, and then get away from that shiny object syndrome. My book says that. It talks a lot about that.
Yeah, I have a client that they change their POS system, I swear, every 3 months, and I'm like, "My gosh." I don't even have to deal with that, but I can't imagine the headache of just changing that so often and retraining, and, you know, there must be some cost benefit analysis they've done to keep changing it, but, yeah, you were talking about earlier about investors, and it made me think of, kinda when I watched Dragon's Den, and seeing, and one of the investors that's on the panel saying, "I will give you this for this," and I always look at it much like you said, it's a partnership, and partnership is give and take, and at that point, you can see the entrepreneur kinda go, "No, this is all mine," or, "Yes," like, it seems to be like A or B, where and you can I would love to see stats on follow-up stats on the success of those that leaned into this partnership versus those who said, "Oh, no, well, I only want to give away 2% for 500,000. I don't need a partner," you know what I mean? So I love that you talk about it. And I also loved when you said that you took the position of the entrepreneur with the investors because you needed to kind of be ingrained, I guess, with what they're doing. And I find with entrepreneurs and small business owners, when they're looking at even what they sell or who they're selling it to, they're often what they think what they think they're selling the most of is not accurate, and who they're
Right.
selling to is not accurate. So when you go in and you're positioning yourself with the entrepreneur, how do you navigate those types of conversations where you're what you're selling the most of is actually this, and who you're selling it to is actually this?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's a matter of, looking at the numbers. A lot of times you just have to look at the
Gotcha.
numbers and they'll that'll explain it. And then it's a matter of like if if you can get them to think, that because the numbers really are important too. The marketing's important, but also really got to track your numbers. And a lot of times entrepreneurs just don't do a lot of that tracking. And so that's a matter of like, what can you do to get, um, do I need to bring in an outside person to kind of walk through it with them? Can I walk through it with them? Those are the types of things. I always try to bring in people that are going to be smarter than me, that can do things that maybe that I'm not good at, and get th- get them because I want to get, my big thing is get their company to the next level, and that's really where it comes down to. Um, and some entrepreneurs are maybe not open for that.
Mm.
That's the thing is they're comfortable where they're at. They don't want to take the risk, and that's fine. But that's not where I'm gonna swim. So I look at it as if we want to get this company next level. I always say, you know, 10x. There's no difference between that and 2x. I mean, there's actually a book out there on that. If you look at it, you're going to struggle just as much in the as where you're at now. You probably are already struggling. So why not push it to the next level? Get people in into the seats that need to be in the seats and get to the next level. And that's where I look at it, is that idea is that comfortable is kind of an illusion. That's a matter of like they're comfortable where they're at, but why not be comfortable where they're 10x at? That's the thing. I would say that it's just a matter of where they're at in their life. And so I just say, okay, let's get to that next level and be around people that want to do that too. I think a lot of times, they don't have that support, that really understands what they're going through, things like that. What are the things that they need to do to get to the next level? That they need to have somebody. That's where I go back to advisors, mentors, things like that. And I talk about that in my book. So,
Okay. Well, just kind of riffing on that idea as we kind of close out our discussion today is that I read on your site that you believe that the combination of marketing and innovation is the lifeblood of any successful enterprise. And we didn't talk too much about innovation. We didn't talk too much about AI and tools, although you did kind of mention shiny objects, which I think AI tools would fall definitely in there. So why do you believe it's a combination of marketing and innovation? And can you kind of explain how you feel that that's the lifeblood of a successful enterprise?
well, I mean, if you look at your company, are you a widget that everybody else sells, or do you want to be something different? And so that's where the marketing comes into play, really to make yourself look different than everybody else. If you're a commodity, then the price is going to be the biggest thing. But if you really want to get outside of that, it really becomes one thing is, the marketing to get you to the next, to make you look different than everybody else. And that is, um, your customer has to know who you are, and they have to continually know who you are, because as soon as you drop off not contacting your customers, somebody else will. And the other thing is too is if you want to bring in more customers, marketing is really important to that. And that is your marketing has to be different than your competitor's marketing, because if you're going to make yourself look just like your competitor, You're just a commodity then. And so, and that's where, and then on top of that is the innovation. Innovation is really going to be important. I'd say that, continually growing as a company, you need to be innovative too. That widget you did 10 years ago is probably not going to cut it now. So they continually work through that and then look at, that's where I come back to, if you can go outside and look at different, not so much your competitor, but maybe industries that are not even similar to yours. Maybe there's an idea that you can bring in for that innovation side. I always say that there's usually one or two ideas you can get from any company. And so that's where I'd say that those two together, they can really get your company to the next level. Because the marketing, I always say that you have to have at least 6 different types of marketing. Because what happens a lot of times, maybe one area gets stale. Everybody says, well, I'm marketing online. Well, maybe that's not where your customers are.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
the thing is, that you really have to understand where your customer hangs out, where they go, what types of things, how do they even think about your company? Do they think about your company? And then it's a matter of like getting out and seeing those customers. I always say, become the authority in your field. Be the one that everybody comes to, looks at you as the authority, not the expert, but the authority. And so that's where, because expert is, I can get ChatGPT to write me something. I can get, I can look it up in Google, but authority is, that's even bigger. That's where you come into play, and I can make decisions based on, they come to me because decisions that I can bring.
No, I love that. I love that. And to kind of as we close out, I know that your website has tons of free resources. I saw that if you get the book, there's bonus chapters and workbooks and all that fun stuff. But why don't you just, as we close out, tell me just what's happening with you, what you're working on, and the best way for people to get in touch with you.
So yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is email me. You can get steve@bisonequitygroup.com. You can go to my website. It's bisonequitygroup.com. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's a great place to go. And we're working on right now, the thing is we're working with other companies, but we're really trying to get a lot of these companies at the next level. And that's really what we're working on right now. We moved into a different office, bigger space, more people to work for us to bring value to our customer base. So that's really what we're working through.
I love that you're so chill. Like you're very down to earth, and I feel that if I was working with you, um, uh, I don't know, it feels very natural conversation flow. So definitely, hopefully our listeners will feel comfortable reaching out to you because this conversation has been absolutely lovely. So thank you, Steve, for sharing your insights and stories with us. And I love that you approach scaling and showing that it doesn't have to be at the cost of anything else, and that as business owners, we're more ready for scaling than we even know that we are. So for those listeners who want to learn more, you can send Steve an email. The notes will be in our broadcast notes. You can grab a copy of Make the 10X Leap. And for everyone tuning in, remember, there is no single path to growth. Keep experimenting, keep innovating, as Steve says, and I'll see you next time on A Marketing State of Mind.
Thanks a lot, Lynn.
Thank you for tuning in to Marketing State of Mind. If this sparks something, hit subscribe and share it with someone navigating visibility too. Want to work together or see how I help vision-driven brands get clear and seen? Head to cyberprarmy.com or connect with me on LinkedIn, Lynn Kolpa. Until next time, sit in the clarity and remember, visibility isn't about shouting. It's about saying the right thing in the right state of mind.